Recently, somebody pointed out to me that the difference in mission from Microsoft and Apple is that Apple is focused on best user experience versus Microsoft, which is focused to empower every person and every organization. And that's obviously quite a different approach. Now, I myself am a big Apple user. I have a few laptops. I have iPad, iPhone, I have the Apple Watch, I have a Mac Mini. I reviewed the Mac Studio. As those that followed me, I will link it up here, I think, up here in the right corner. So if you want to, feel free to check that out. But there are 5 things that recently annoyed me very much about the customer experience that is technically in the mission of Apple. And so today I want to cover those 5 things that really annoy me about my experiences with macOS. Number 1 surprises me because it doesn't apply to iPad or iPhone, but it applies to macOS. So when you install the system, you're going to have to authenticate, including your Apple ID. So authenticate, but there's still going to be a creation of a local user that I'm going to use. And that is going to create a contact card. And then later on, when the contacts are synchronized, I can go into the Contacts app, select my existing contact cards and say, use this or make this my contact card. Why is that important? Well, your newly created user doesn't have your address, doesn't have your work address. So if you're in Maps, it doesn't use those addresses. It doesn't have your phone number associated with it. It's basically a blank contact with my first name and last name. And I don't understand that. Why is it not automatically syncing as soon as I authenticate with my Apple ID, with my contact card, and uses this across all my Macs with my picture, profile picture? With Windows, I'm used for that, at least for Windows 10. Not sure I remember Windows 8, but for quite some time I'm used to that in the Windows ecosystem. Number 2, something like a sandbox. At Windows, it offers you a sandbox that you basically can even link with in your taskbar, so you can just start it like any program. It's a Windows instance in the sandbox. You can install, do whatever you want. It's very helpful in my case where I have demo environments and other things to test something out, and as soon as I close the window, everything in that is destroyed. So it keeps the rest of my system intact. This is not for like an ongoing lab procedure. This is I need to check something now, if that has been solved or not, and how it behaves. So super convenient, super easy. Haven't found a way to do that with Mac. That leads me to point number 3, virtualization. Windows has the capability. I'm not sure about every Windows licensing. I think Home most likely not, but the Enterprise Edition gives me the way to use virtual machines that I could deploy for lab environments that I go back. On Apple, there's no native such system. I will have to use either open source technology or pay something. This would also have been helpful because many macOS users using a virtualization to run Windows could be for work-related things because they may have some line of business application that run on Windows and they need Windows to access it. And I think very popular solution is Parallels Desktop. But again, it could just be built in. Just think about how far Windows has come with a subsystem for Linux where you can run out of the box, for example, Ubuntu in Windows. So for developers, a very great tool. So that, to my surprise, on Mac, I'm not aware of a tool that does that. Number 4 is about setting a system recovery point, if you will, that would allow me after I make changes to go back to that point. Now you have Time Machine, which is an awesome backup. You could argue has a great backup experience, but I haven't found an option to replace like the whole system, but not the files. It seems like I have to select a specific folder to do that. For example, on Windows, I can say like I want to refresh Windows and I can just reinstall the Windows OS without it touching in my files. And something like this on macOS would be very helpful. I was experimenting around with one of the machines and I knew I'm gonna screw it up because I do this for the first time. I'm learning something. And then basically uninstall and reinstall it is literally like off-booting, holding a keyboard shortcut, booting in it, then reinstalling it and start all from new versus just giving me an easy options to refresh my computer without having to worry about my files or anything. And then last, this is the keyboard. So I mentioned I have a bunch of Mac computers. I use the same desktop setup and I always use the Logitech cable keyboard so that I can, with the USB hub, depending on which device I plug in, my keyboard will work. My mouse is a Bluetooth mouse, a Surface Bluetooth mouse that has like 3 different connections that I can do. And if I use more computers, I just have to reset a connection. Now that I mainly work with Macs right now in my home office setup, I bought the Magic Keyboard and I saw on the picture in the store app that it has a cable. Turns out the cable is just for charging. Now, currently my keyboard is linked to the Mac Mini, but if I use my MacBook Pro, for example, to edit this episode, then I read I could technically connect the cable, I think, when I boot it, and it will pair the keyboard with it. But it's complicated. I mean, Apple solved it with the AirPods, right? I put my AirPods in, and depending on what device I use, I'm gonna get a pop-up saying, you wanna use your AirPods with this device? And I can say, yeah, sounds lovely, let's do that. So why not with the keyboard? Or at least, just as the picture kinda implied, which is the reason why I spent that kind of pricey money for a keyboard, why not allow me to also use it in cable mode? Right? Like, I'm sure somebody would be not happy, but at least I could. Now I'm like on the brink. Should I return it? Should I go back to my Logitech keyboard? But then I really miss some of the Apple shortcuts, keyboard shortcuts. Sure, you can learn to memorize it, but why? It seems like this is something that could be solved easily. Now you might think some of the things I talked about are actually solved. If so, please write the solution in the comments down below. I would love to learn that. If I missed something, also, write it in the comments. What are things that you think Apple lacks in user experience and you wish they would improve? I hope you found this episode valuable. If not, or if you liked it, give me a thumbs up, thumbs down, subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet. And with that, DDivKurt out.